Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Gene, and I'm back with another video. We all know I was going to see this. We all know I was going to comment on it. So, let's get right to it. I hope everyone's doing well. So, let's see this official tweet, right, from DC Comics. Today, Jim Lee unveiled a new mission statement for DC Superman. So, traditional Superman, Clark Kent Superman. At DC Fandom, Truth, Justice, and a Better Tomorrow. First of all, while I respect Jim Lee for his history in the comic book industry and certainly his art, right? He was the artist on Marvel back in the early 1990s. They're probably their highest selling point. I have never thought Jim's tenure at DC, I should say, has proven to me that he is not a good leader. I hate to say that about the man, but that's how I feel about it. I'm just going to be honest. Great artist, probably a nice dude in real life, but terrible leader. But here's the thing, right? Now let's address this phrase itself: truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. I want to be clear. In my opinion, the issue is not the phrase. This is a perfectly fine phrase for Superman. He's always represented truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. His character represents hope. He's a paragon. He represents the best in ideals, right? He's the Superman, as close to a perfect being as you could ever be. Technically, he's not even human, right? So there is nothing wrong with the phrase in and of itself. I think it's a fine phrase to use with all the other phrases that have been used to describe Superman over the years, right? So, such as the one, look, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman, right? Or he can move faster than a speeding bullet, leap buildings in a single bound, and all this other stuff. It's a fine phrase to be added to the long list of other phrases or mission statements, as Jim says here, that have defined Superman over the 80 some years of his existence as a character. So, to be clear, in my opinion, for whatever that is worth, the phrase is not the problem. I repeat, the phrase is not the problem. If they want to use this phrase, that is fine. The problem is that this phrase is being put in or it's being released because many, myself included, believe that it's meant to replace sort of the defining phrase for Superman, which is truth, justice, and the American way, right? That phrase, that emphasis at the end, and the American way, emphasizes the fact that Superman is not just a hero, which he is, he's a paragon, and that's fine. But he is distinctly an American hero, right? He is the representation of American ideals, of the American understanding of things such as truth and justice and liberty and various other grand noble ideas, right? He was raised in America, right? In Smallville, Kansas. He is the embodiment of of small town America ideals traditionally as a character. And now you have this phrase being used unjustly, in my personal opinion, to more or less paint over and replace the truth, justice, and American way phrase, right? Which is going to turn a lot of people against this phrase that they're trying to introduce just on principle, right? It's, in a weird way, kind of similar to what Marvel did a few years ago. I think it was in 2016 with They're All New, All Different, when they brought in a bunch of female superheroes, right? Like Kate Bishop, Hawkeye, or they brought in X-23 and She-Hulk and all that, and used the women to replace the traditional male characters, right? And take their names, right? Try to sort of erase them, it was perceived, and take their place. Well, now we have that, but now with a phrase, a slogan that is used to define the character. And the funny thing is that DC would not do this to any other character who is defined by their nationality. Because here we have several images of the DC superheroine Katana. Now, not Princess Katana of Mortal Kombat fame, but Katana. Now, this may be really difficult to see. This may be very difficult to pick up on, but she's Japanese. I know, I mean, her design, her name, you would never guess. But Katana is Japanese. If you take her Japanese identity away from her, you have fundamentally altered the character, right? She represents Japan and Japanese values, or at least Japanese values from an American perspective, right? And that's okay. That's fine. So long as you're respectful, I don't think most people care. And comics in general, and I think Marvel in particular, at least in my experience, I'm not as knowledgeable about DC as I am Marvel, so I am kind of working from a disadvantage here, right? But in comics, it's perfectly normal to have heroes who, sort of represent a country, right? The same way you have in the Olympics, you have athletes who represent their nation, right? You have superheroes who represent their country, right? In Marvel, it's characters like, say, Captain Britain, who obviously represents the UK, right? Or you have characters such as Alpha Flight, right, who represent Canada. They might even have a Captain Canada, although I can't remember off the top of my head, right? And that's different than, characters who just hail from a certain part. For example, Wolverine is Canadian, but he does not necessarily represent Canada, right? He just happens to be a mutant who hails from that particular country, to the point that it's often a running joke in the comics that people think he's American. Probably because of his attitude, right? He doesn't live up to the stereotype of the excessively apologetic or kind Canadian. But anyway, my point in all this is that there is nothing wrong with having a character who represents a particular country or the values of that country. What this kind of reminds me of, as things often do in comics, is pro wrestling. Now, let me explain. I'm going to approach this from sort of 2 points. One is the idea of an I'm not quite sure that the term itself applies too well with Superman, but hear me out. The idea of an ethnic hero, right, or a hero who represents a certain group of people, right? I was watching a video a few months ago from a channel called Dave Knows Wrestling, and he covered this trope. And he talked about how you had heroes in wrestling, especially back in the old days, like the 50s, 60s, 70s, right? Who represented a certain ethnic group in America. Like you had Bruno Sammartino, who was sort of the champion of the Italians, right? A modern day example might be the late great Eddie Guerrero, right? Or just luchadors in general who take great pride in being Mexican, right? But what he pointed out was that when this trope is done well, that character becomes, or that character, that gimmick, that wrestler becomes not just a hero or not just a representation of the ideals held by a certain particular ethnic group, but they become a hero to those outside of that ethnic group, to the world at large. And I would say Superman is like Captain America, an example of that. Yes, he's the embodiment of American ideals and American values, but he also represents a lot of just admirable qualities, right? Admirable, heroic qualities, which is why he can be beloved by people who are who are not American, I should say, right? it kind of reminds me. Well, I shouldn't say it kind of reminds me, right? What I mean to say is that the concept of the American hero in media is defined by Superman, right? You take Hulk Hogan in pro wrestling, especially in his 80s heyday, right? Literally, when he's a face, when he's playing the good guy character, he comes out to a song that goes, I am a real American, and all this other stuff, right? He is, especially for the older crowd, he is wrestling Superman. Modern day would probably be John Cena, who has heavily leaned into the whole, American soldier um, uh, type thing on occasion in his career with his aesthetic, wearing camo or doing a salute or things of that nature. And even when he's faced, Sergeant Slaughter, right? Although that's more about the military than necessarily American ideals, right? But still, you have those type of American hero characters. Or you look at something like My Hero Academia, All Might. All Might is very much in the classic American hero, even in his design, and that is heavily influenced by Superman. Even characters that are meant to sort of be a evil version of or a more anti-hero version of Superman, like say Homelander from The Boys, right? He's still based on the American hero archetype, which is defined, at least in my opinion, by Superman. And I speak as someone who is a Marvel fan, first and foremost, but Superman is the definitive American superhero. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with the phrase truth, justice, and the American way. That's not being exclusionary, right, of people who are not American. It just depicts, or I shouldn't say depicts, it just represents or mentions what he represents. He's an American. He was raised in America. Think about it. Culturally, whether you like it or not, Superman is an American. He's a small town American man, or a small town American boy, I should say. He's the son of farmers, right? I know many people don't like that in today's world because they make certain associations with, I should say, certain political associations with small town America and farming, right, and that type of stuff. But that's what Superman is. That's literally his origin story, right? He's a baby. He gets sent off Krypton in a last ditch effort. He ends up landing in a field in small town Kansas, USA. As we've seen in Elseworld stories like Superman Red Sun, where he lands in the Soviet Union, if you change his origin story, if he does not land in America, then his values change. What he represents changes. The type of hero, or not hero, depending on how you look at things, he is changes, right? His personality, his morals come are molded by, right, and given to him by his parents. His parents, right, John and Martha, are small town America. Like it, lump it, I don't give a damn. But those are the origins of the character. He's an American. He represents truth, justice, and the American way. DC over the years has depicted, they have had plenty of images of Captain America, not Captain America, sorry, plenty of images of Superman, right, standing by the American flag. And that's fine. Same way Marvel has had, images of Captain America holding the flag, or back in the day when Miss Marvel was still Carol Danvers. Like seriously, one of the most iconic covers for Carol Danvers pre becoming Captain Marvel is the image of her standing in a, like, heroic pose, and there's an American flag behind her. Right, it was drawn by Frank Cho. Let me see if I can pull up the image. Come on, 1 second. Okay, so you see here, right? This cover, right? She's standing or floating right in front of the American flag, because she used to be Air Force in the American military, right? Or right, you see this image here of Captain America, and what do we see, right? We see the American flag behind him, right? Let's take a look at America Chavez. Oh, look what we have here. Her with American sunglasses on, right? You look at this number one here in the corner, right? It's the Stars and Stripes. America. There's nothing wrong with having characters that represent a particular country. There's nothing wrong with that. And you know why we have Carol Danvers or Captain America or America Chavez? Sorry. We have characters like Captain America and Carol Danvers because and America Chavez, I should add, because before all of them, even before Hulk Hogan and John Cena, we had the original, the definitive American superhero paragon character, Superman. He represents American values. He represents the ideal of the ideals of American values, right? And that is okay. That is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong or offensive or political about that. People make his American identity an issue, but it is not an issue in and of itself. The costume he wears is meant to be evocative of the American flag. There's a reason why it's red and blue. It's not a mistake. He's American. Superman is a Kryptonian alien born and raised in small town America. And there is nothing wrong with that. He stands for truth, justice, and the, come on, American way. Yes, he also represents a better tomorrow. He represents hope. That does not have to be lost. That does not have to be hidden away or removed. But neither does his American identity. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk. Anyway, have a good day or night wherever you are, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.